Good morning, everyone. I think Kaviraj ji has joined. Sir, have you joined?
Yeah, I have joined. Good morning and
Good
thank you for
morning.
joining. I'm just trying to share the presentation on from my
Yes, sir.
laptop.
Sir, I'll before that I'll just quickly, give a quick introduction,
Ah,
and then probably I'll hand it over to you, sir. I hope that's
perfect,
okay,
perfect.
sir.
That is perfectly fine. That's perfectly
My
fine.
vo
Thank
my
you.
voice is all okay with you, sir?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Is
Okay.
my presentation now viewable?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible, sir. But
Ah,
before that, sir, I'll just give a very brief, introduction about what we are planning to do and what is today's session all about. And then
perfect,
probably I'll hand it over to you, sir.
perfect, perfect. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone, all the CSR noodles, and I extend a very warm welcome to each one of you who are representing your laboratories across different ministries and departments. We are very extremely honored to have our today's keynote note speaker, Shri Kaviraj Nair, Chief Executive Officer at the Office of Institutional Advancement at IIT Madras. I also welcome officials from our CSIR headquarters, Head PMBD of CSIR-IMTECH, and other scientists and researchers who have given their valuable time to attend this webinar. So it gives me immense pleasure in informing you that till date, more than 150 national research laboratories and autonomous institutions under the administrative control of CSIR, IITs, DBT, DST, ICAR, ICMR, DRDO, DAE, and MITI have nominated their CSR noodles from their respective institutions to participate in this initiative. So the first steps of creating a greater awareness and having a CSR noodle from each of the laboratories has already been taken. And this networking and greater awareness is only going to strengthen in the next 10 months or so. Now let me tell you something about this project, sir. The project funded by DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance under the India Research Management Initiative for advancing research and development through corporate social responsibility aims to address the underutilization of CSR funds in India's research and development ecosystem. Researchers often lack knowledge about CSR's legal and regulatory aspects, best practices across organizations, what type of projects to pitch for CSR, and how to effectively present projects to the industry. And the first three webinars aim to answer some of these questions and has brought a perspective on fundraising programs, CSR project proposals, and some of the best practices across organizations. Uh, CSR Noodles, let me tell you something about Shri Kaviraj ji. It's a great privilege to have Shri Kaviraj Nair deliver today's talk, who is spearheading the CSR initiatives at IIT Madras. An alumnus of IIT Madras and IIM Bangalore, Kaviraj is strategically leading growth and acceleration of the various corporate and alumni partnerships and futuristic initiatives at the Office of Institutional Advancement at IIT Madras. He is a seasoned business leader with more than 2 decades of rich and diverse experience in sectors such as IT, media, power, etc. He was among the select members of the high-profile leadership programs TAS by Tata Group and ECLP by General Electric. With 180 plus CSR partners and CSR projects worth 240 plus crores in the past few years, IIT Madras has been pioneering technology-driven societal impact on a range of themes, and Kaviraj ji has played a pivotal role in this astounding success of the institute in mobilizing CSR funds. Today's webinar promises to be both insightful and engaging, focusing on the important topic of role of CSR in scientific research. And we are really excited to explore it with you, sir. I once again extend a very warm welcome to you, sir. Before I hand it over to you, I would request all the participants to mute their mics. And if any query is there, they can put it up in the chat box. The question and answer session will follow at the end of the talk to maintain continuity and cohesiveness in Kaviraj's presentation. The session is being recorded and the talk would be hosted on the web portal that will be designed at the end of the project. With these words, I would hand it over to Kaviraj. Over to you, sir. Sir, you are on mute, sir. You are on mute, sir.
Thank you, Manojji. Thank you so much for that very comprehensive introduction and a very clear perspective on what is the expectation and all of that. Thank you so much for setting the context very well. Thank you to all the honorable attendees who have taken their time out of their busy schedule to attend this discussion. and I would expect this to be an interactive session. So our idea is basically to give some thoughts, some philosophies with which we are approaching this CSR fundraising, and then very happy to, after all, we are all co-collaborators in this pursuit, right? We would like more and more private organizations to spend this CSR funds on scientific research. That is a common goal that all of us have. So I think all of us should give out our ideas and perspectives on this so that collectively we can address this whole thing, right? So with that words, I have a short presentation slides which I will use as and when, but I would rather use as a secondary to the conversation that I'm going to have, right? So from IIT Madras perspective, before I get to the slide, I just want to give an overview. So we have, our office actually work with both alumni as well as the corporate social responsibility teams. So we raised last year a total of about 514 crores, of which about 135 crores came from CSR projects. Right. So, and this is also in across areas like healthcare, energy, skill development, water, sustainability, all of that. So one thing that we were actually, we will talk more on this during the discussion, but one thing that we were actually looking at a national level was to have a campaign itself, talking about how organizations should spend their CSR money on scientific research. A national level campaign, it could be a 360-degree communication plan comprising print, television, digital media, all of that, right? Whatever works. Trying to say how, while you can buy, a certain equipment and hand it over to, a certain equipment and hand it over to people free of cost as a charity part. You can also invest in research that will bring down the cost of development of that equipment, which will in the long run have a much larger and a multiplier effect on the overall community and society. So that is where we wanted to tell people that it's absolutely important to give food to people, to give clothes to people, to build schools for people, but it's equally important to spend that CSR money in research which will have far-reaching repercussions, a positive impact. It could be like a medicine for cancer, or a medicine or a new method, or for diagnosing tuberculosis, or any of those things, right? Which will have a complete impact on a large scale of population. So very clearly that is the message. And at IIT Madras, the motto that we have adopted, which we have been spearheading through all our CSR events, is tech for good, tech for social good. So technology for social good is clearly a theme that we have been actively championing, and that has, I must say, with I'm delighted to inform you that that has actually galvanized the internal ecosystem. Also, we have about close to 700 faculty members, right? More and more people, the success always breeds more and more success, right? Like, so when we see success stories coming out of it, when we and also talk about it, it's very important for us to communicate the success stories coming out of this socially relevant research. Also, it kind of helps encourage lot more or many more faculty members to come into this area and look at social problems in a far more comprehensive way, and address them as a next level in that evolution. So if I kind of step back and I look at it, now we are actually looking at collaborative projects across institutes, right? Which again will have national impact. So we have a few projects where we are collaborating with other NITs or IITs and all of them in a hub and spoke model, where we are able to kind of look at problems at a national level. So I think there are opportunities for collaboration for all of us in this call, where we could address some of those larger problems together, with the support of CSR funding. So with these words, I'll maybe get to the slides and then kind of look at a few of them. Yeah, are you able to see this?
It's yes, sir. We can see now, sir.
It's coming up?
Yes, sir. It's coming now. I can see the slides.
Okay. Yeah, so a role of CSR in scientific research, IIT Madras is, yeah. Moving on.
Sir, you are on mute, sir. Sir, you are on mute.
sorry. The first part, I will talk a little bit about compliance and overall landscape and what it means, right? So yeah. As you know, so there are 17 SDG goals, right, which essentially drive, so the way we establish the CSR Connect is also by looking at the 17 SDG goals. So any of the projects actually, if you analyze the impact of it, like so many a time, what I find as a practitioner is that the proposals written by the technologists are usually very technical in nature, right? And hence, some of them don't take extra effort to articulate the social impact that it creates, though it must be quite obvious. But for the person who is on the other side of this equation, that is a private a private organization or an MNC corporate, where the CSR lead is looking at this whole proposal, he or she is uh, clearly keen to see what is the social impact of this whole thing, right? And a clear articulation of that, more than and at the next level only he will look at the scientific backing and the formulas involved and things like that, and he's assuming that the researcher has taken care of that aspect. So many a time, I think what our organization does is, the one team, we have a team which is dedicated to actually writing the proposals itself. They work with the faculty members and kind of try and re-articulate the proposal to make it more impact focused and articulate that part, right? I think that is very important. And at that point in time, we also look at analyze the SD, the sustainable development goals, SDG goals, UN SDG goals, and kind of establish the correlation between an SDG goal and the project proposal, which is actually not a very difficult task. It's quite easy to do once you understand the SDG goals. And that also gives a comfort to the other donor organization to kind of move forward, right? So that is one thing that we do. And I will just yeah. So these are the SDG goals, as you know. Uh, this is pretty much available on the internet, and people know that poverty eradication, or affordable and clean energy, or gender equity, quality education, all these things, right? Climate action. So most of the projects can actually be categorized under these, right? And this is again, right, a listing of those things. SDGs and corporate social responsibility. So this is, and I also want to talk about a little bit about the Schedule 7 of the Companies Act, and the annexure talks about spending CSR funds on scientific research. So this is something that these are things which are available pretty much on the internet, and I just posted them here just for getting the context thing. So in fact, when Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, who was the finance minister in the last ministry, and she came to inaugurate our CSR conclave a couple of years back, and she had a dialogue with the industry leaders wherein she very clearly articulated that while the government is spending a lot of money on R&D and other things, these ratios could be better compared to some of the more developed organizations globally, right? And one way to help is that allowing private organizations to channelize their CSR funds for scientific research. So there is an active encouragement from the part of the government to help spend the CSR funds on the scientific research. Right. And as per the company's mandate, you know that every profit-making company has to spend 2% of its profits back into the society as part of CSR funding. And it cannot spend those funds on activities which will have a direct benefit on the organization. So those are known things, right? Like, so that kind of helps us. Right. And if you look at corporate India CSR funds, as you can see, sector-wise, how it is kind of proportioned, right? So you have education, healthcare, rural development, environmental sustainability, poverty eradication, and malnutrition. So, some of these themes actually take up a significant priority. And many organizations in the beginning of the year, like, the CSR board, and then even the board of the organization itself takes some calls on what are the areas in which they want to kind of fund their proposals. So we kind of try and find out those things and then try and align our proposals as per that, right? So again, these things can be like, based on analysis from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, we can actually look at this data. Right. And so top 5 sectors, as you see, is health and sanitation, education and livelihood, environment and animal welfare, and PM relief and other funds, and rural development. And geographically, like, so Mumbai has a large proportion. That's also because not all that money gets spent inside Bombay. It is because many of the companies are headquartered in Bombay, and like so we kind of look at it that way. Yeah, but across the spend wise, there are spends pan India wise. So especially there are regions where Northeast, and there are companies who come to us saying that they want to spend their CSR funds for activities relevant, socially relevant activities in Northeast or any of those areas. So it helps if we can have some internal understanding about our own projects available and how they can be geographically apportioned, and that kind of helps us to reach these potential donors in a more effective way, right? Now I'll since I also represent IIT Madras, I'll talk a little bit about IIT Madras and the CSR part. So yeah, so our NIRF ranking is we have been ranked number one in the as per the ministry in the engineering category and in the overall category as number one for several years, actually eight consecutive years in the engineering category ever since the ranking started. And from academic research projects, publications, and output perspective, some basic statistics. So we spend a lot of time on academic research. We spend time on translational research. We spend time on transformational research, which have a direct societal impact. And just to give some numbers on this, about 1,550 ongoing projects, 600 plus Indian companies, 84 plus foreign companies have worked with us, and 190 plus annual IP filed. And this number is obviously evolving. Today is our convocation day, and we are now in the process of 365 IP filings happening in a year. So that's what's happening. Like, so there's a clear focus on creating intellectual property out of these projects also, which I think all of us, I think it's a very relevant point for all of us who are on this call.
So you have again on mute, sir. Again from this slide.
Hello?
Yes. From this
Yeah,
slide
can you hear
onwards,
me?
you were on mute, sir.
Yeah. Sorry. I think accidentally it got pressed. The institute has been pioneering technology-driven social impact on a range of themes, from energy to education, agriculture to artificial intelligence, water to waste management, health. So this is basically some statistics from our side as to how we have been approaching, right? So we'll move to the next slide. Yeah, these are some of the examples. So let me kind of stop here before I move to the next slide. I'm happy to take a couple of questions or any of those things or any discussion points that people may have, or otherwise we can continue. Let me know.
So you spoke about, you when you gave those statistics on, city-wise expenditure where Mumbai was the highest. Is there a rule that where the company has its headquarters, they also have to appropriation some funds for that, benefiting that local geography? So does Mumbai also get some part of the CSR funds specifically for the development of, CSR initiatives through funds? Because I heard that through some companies that they are also expected to have CSR expenditure locally, where they are located. Is that
So that honestly, there is no legal requirement like that it needs to be spent in the place where the company is located very clearly. But many manufacturing organizations spend this money in areas where their factories are located from a goodwill creation perspective. So there are organizations which told us that, our factories are in this area in the state, and so we would like to do some projects in and around this area. So that is clearly a mandate. In fact, I have my colleague Vasudha also on this call. She leads CSR fundraising as part of the team. And so she's also, in touch with many of the corporates as part of the CSR fundraising and, project closure on that. Yeah.
Good
So to
afternoon to
respond,
everybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
welcome Vasudha ji also, please.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So, so just to respond to your question, Manuji, so there is no compliance requirement that it needs to be spent in the city where it is headquartered.
Except that probably corporates like to do it. They like to be seen a bit in their CSR work, and for the sake of that, they do spend money in around their factories or units, etc., as Kaviraj
Yes.
mentioned.
Yes, yes. Because we had one or two discussions where they were saying, since our company is not based out of Chandigarh, probably the board will have to look at your proposal and see how best we can fit in your requirement. So that was one concern that I had, because Mumbai is leading by many folds compared to other cities. The graph that Kaviraj ji just showed.
Correct. So no, as I said, that is based on the company headquarters. It doesn't mean that that money as much is being spent there in that city. Right. Yeah. Now,
So again, you are on mute, sir.
yeah. No, I said I'll now give a little bit of an idea about how IIT Madras is spending their CSR funds, right? So we have the centers of excellence in areas like any of these things, right? Which basically look at a problem in its entirety, which are interdisciplinary centers of excellence, and we kind of pitch these projects, and then there is a back and forth that happens in terms of customizing the project proposal and arriving at the clear deliverables and timelines and all of that, and then the project gets sanctioned and we sign the MOU and take it forward very clearly. And it takes a little bit of time. So one point I want to make it very clear is that CSR funding doesn't happen overnight. It's a very long haul process. So one has to. Sometimes we have to spend several months and almost sometimes multiple years before an organization really agrees to fund a project. So this is certainly not something that one should expect that it will close in a month's time or 2 weeks time or any of those things.
So it's on mute, sir.
Sorry, I think it is getting automatically every time I press enter, it's getting automatically muted. Sorry about that. So yeah, so some of these projects were Cortec supported an energy assessment center wherein we work with other IITs and NITs. This is a project that has happened from CSR. The reason why we are kind of projecting these proposals, I mean these projects here, is to give you an idea about the kind of proposals that got funded for us last few years. Robert Bosch Center, which is again a very famous center that we have, Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and AI. It was funded Center for in the AI and data science area. There is a Center for AI for Bharat is another project that we have, where natural language processing is used to kind of create this huge database where one could be speaking in their respective vernacular. I could be speaking in Malayalam, somebody else could be speaking in Tamil, and then there is a real-time translation of those works. So essentially, these are things which a for-profit organization will not want to immediately take up, because there is some basic work that has to be done before apps can be built on top of that and money can be made by other organizations. So this first leg, which is the most crucial part, where this huge database is built, that is left to then non-governmental organizations and universities to do. So universities clearly have a role even in for-profit segments, where a lot of legwork has to be done in a not-for-profit way, right? And that's a critical leg, and that's where universities can come in picture. Capacity building is another area, skill development is another area, right? These are all things. We have International Center for Clean Water at IIT Madras, where CSR funding is used to kind of help with removal of water contamination and things like that, right? And assisted mobility is another area. So CSR funding has been received for quantum computing, fintech area. So this is basically, the point I wanted to mention here is that, yeah, we have several examples of successfully getting funds for, research projects as well, and really technical projects. Say, for example, quantum computing center is one which where we got funded funds for highly technical area, right? And now we got funds for AI and data science. This intersection between AI and data science is another area. So there are several success stories of CSR funds coming through for these kind of project areas. So that should be encouraging for all the participants on this call is how I would look at it. I would want to kind of again pause here and look for any comments, questions, or any other discussion things that you would like to have.
So I'll request CSR Noodles to, if they have any questions, it's a great opportunity to put it to Kaviraj so that his, experiences can be shared with your institute, or let's say if you have anything that's in mind after seeing his presentation, maybe we can take that question, or you can also type it in the chat box. Kaviraj, meanwhile, while they ponder over the questions, I just wanted to ask you, uh, in your overall segmentation, how much, of these CSR funds is, let's say, the initial leads or are routed through your alumni network? Because we all know that IIT Madras has a very successful alumni network, and they go on establish good companies and reputed companies, and they want to give back to their alma mater, to their institute in some form of the other. So, in terms of segmentation, if you can give us some idea, what's the role of alumni in the mobilizing these CSR funds for the institute?
So frankly speaking, that's a completely different. So the answer is that between alumni and CSR funding, we have a completely demarked, complete separation actually. So
Okay.
this is a completely different fundraising wherein we write to the corporates directly and reach out, right? And it so it has to go to the CSR committee, CSR head, and all of that. Alumni fundraising is a separate leg where we reach out to alumni for their personal contribution. So there are people like, several reputed alumni who would like to do charity from their own personal foundations and things like that. So alumni fundraising is completely different. And, the set of people usually involved in the CSR fundraising, even from the donor organization, not many of them are our alumni, right? So our alumni get into usually the CTO or become a technologist or an R&D head or any of that. Whereas this goes through the CSR team. So it's a completely different thing. So we have a different set of communication, and it gets presented to the CSR head, and then the audit committee or the actual board of the organization and things like that. So that's a different one.
Okay. Dr. Hina from Tata Memorial Center, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, yes. So I'm Dr. Hina sir from Tata Memorial Center. So my question is, I have two questions. So one is, although we are raising lots of fund, but the thing is, every donor wants the brand visibility, and for research, it is a bit difficult. So for us, it's easier to raise the fund for the patient care. So donors and the CSR partners are ready to construct an infrastructure and for any equipment part, but many of the time they are not convinced for the research project. So how you are dealing with this, number one. And my the second question is the impact. So if they find for the patient support, treatment support, they have the clear impacts that they have supported for this many number of patients like that. But when we are convincing for the research, it's a bit difficult to convince for the impact. The thing is, sometimes we also don't know what will be the result of our research projects. So how are you dealing with these two aspects? I would like to know from you, sir.
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. Frankly speaking, that's an area where we are also trying to find a solution, because it is difficult. Like, every CSR head wants to have a certain set of statistics on the annual report wherein they say that they have been able to feed so many people or give education to 100 students or things like that, right? So it is a long haul, but we have been successful. So I think one is it's a very high touch uh, sale, if I may use a word, right? Like, so there is many conversation, because, for example, Vazza on this call has been successful in getting a couple of such deals closed, where I think she spent a lot of time going into several months of engagement, right? A lot of patients and several months of engagement, where finally, so, and it also is a little bit top driven. So one has to kind of then not just talk at the GM level or the CSR head level. One will have to get alignment at the senior most level, right? And the last thing on that is, I think even for research projects, we try and get some intermediate milestones, right? That I think is good to put a pressure on even the researchers also, right? Because we also don't want a case where the researchers are given, while they should be given freedom, they should be also be made accountable, right? There should be accountability in terms of intermediate milestones and outcomes. Vasudha, would you like to add any points to that and from your side? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that this community here on the call today is the right community to address, because in our journey in the last couple of years, we have found that we are creating a category. The CSR people are used to creating impact on the ground, and research is not something they understand. And yes, whilst what Kaviraj mentioned, that we write the proposals in a simplistic manner so they understand, even then the outcomes and milestones are nowhere near what they are used to. They can plant 1000 trees with say X amount of money, but when they are giving it to research, it is uncertain, there is no tangible outcome. So I think that creating the narrative of a potential impact if this project goes well, I think whilst we put that in, it is obviously not measurable. And that's where the role of senior management comes in place, because they convince the CSR heads that yes, this is a good cause, even though you may not be able to measure number of children fed or number of trees planted. Whilst all that is equally important, that this is important, that is where senior management comes in. And the way we pitch the outcomes, that if all goes well in this research, you will have this impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Like
that is a
even
long journey, as Kaviraj said.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
even clinical trials need to be kind of, we need money for clinical trials, for example. It's a very crucial step, right? And how many organizations will come forward and say that, but we have been able to convince some people in that also, right? So I think people have to, it's a leap of faith for the organization also, knowing fully well that, the clinical trial might actually lead to the the outcome not being successful, and then that's also an outcome, of course, but that somebody has to take that leap of faith. And I'm actually urging, encouraging all the people on this call, let's all get together and see how we can have a national level campaign, right? It will help the category develop, right? Together we can approach the ministry, together we can have a 360-degree communication plan, which will exhort the organization to set aside at least, my point is this, right? Like, instead of, don't if you don't want to spend all of your CSR funds on scientific research, that's fine. But let there be something like, if we can have at least not a hardened rule or compliance issue, but at least a soft nudging around spending 25% of your CSR funds on scientific research. I think that will be a huge victory for this community here, and that will help all of us, right? And it's something that we are all convinced of, right? I think there should be sufficient funding on that. Yeah.
Yes, sir, I agree. I think we should approach together. Thank you so much for answering that. Thank you.
My question is to both Kaviraj and Vasudha. Most of the departments, like let's say I represent CSIR, we have our internal guidelines, on how to approach for CSR funds, because there are certain risks involved, and conflict of interest issues and other things there. So does IIT Madras also have a sort of a handbook or a rule book on their scientists on how to, probably go and approach for CSR funds, or it happens through the Office of Advancement cell only?
No, it
Or do
happens
you
through
have
our
some
office.
internal mechanism? I just
No,
wanted
it
to hear on
happens
that.
through our office. So our office is clearly the via media for CSR fundraising. So we kind of make sure that things are. I think everything is kosher that way. I don't think there is any conflict of interest that we face that way. Yeah.
Okay. And second question was related to Hina's question, that since R&D projects, typical R&D projects have a certain amount, a certain degree of risks involved, in terms of outcomes and deliverables. So do corporates for R&D prefer, creating of an infrastructure sort of a thing where, they know the deliverables would be there. Let's say, putting up some creation of some facility or creation of some, let's say servers and other things where, they know that this is tangible, this is measurable, the kind of impact that is going to have on this ecosystem, R&D ecosystem can be measured. So do they prefer infrastructure creation more over R&D projects where the risk involved is a little bit comparatively higher?
So I'll add my perspective and I'll also request Vasudha to add a few points on that. So very clearly, one, it is company specific. We have interacted with organizations who have come forward and told us that we would like to fund capex projects, right? And see, ultimately, everything has to align with one of those SDG goals, right? Like, so if that connection can be established, and that is from a technical perspective, and also if the donor organization is convinced that this is going to have a larger impact, very clearly they will be happy to do that. So there are organizations which have come forward and told us that we are very happy, please send to us capex projects, equipment, and all of those things. There are also organizations which said that keep the capex component out of it. We don't want to do it at all. We would like to do some on the ground implementation. So the way we look at is technology development, technology deployment, and some of the other areas, right? Like this buildings and capex and all of those things. So all three buckets we have had success stories. Vazda, would you like to add something?
No, no, absolutely right. So there are, different policies that organizations have. Some say a clear no to capex, equipment, etc., and some welcome it because, as you rightly said, it's a tangible asset, and they would like to, have something more visible, more concrete. So it's a mixed bag, and only when you speak to the organization, you then or research about them, you understand what their policy is.
Kaviraj, can you also give an idea about the annual CSR, the annual CSR conference that you have at IIT Madras? Some of the CSR nodals, would like to be part of it, and participate and attend those conferences. Can you give an idea about that?
Yeah, sure. So, every year we do that. We'll be more than happy to extend the invitation as that happens. So sometime in the next quarter is when we are looking at it. So we will be in touch with you. It's basically an IIT Madras centric event that we do. So the idea is to talk about, give opportunity. Our faculty will be presenting some of the, the research work that we're doing as part of that, right? And we will be talking to our existing relationship partners and things like that. So that is the overall agenda of this whole program. It's for half a day, a few hours that we do. So very happy to kind of extend the invitation.
And also, this is an opportunity to invite some of the corporates to come and see the facilities and the lab.
Correct.
So we use that conference, the other half of the day, to kind of take them around.
Okay, okay. So any more questions for the CSR nodals, or we'll ask Kaviraj to continue with his presentation if he has any more slides?
Yeah, I think more or less I'm done. And at the end of my presentation, in fact, so I had one slide wherein just where we kind of spoke about how this whole thing stacks up for us, right? So there's a society part, right? Like how IIT Madras is looking at things like social impact. Then there's a consultancy and sponsored research. There's an incubation and investment, endowment scholarships, training, youth recruitment, all of that. So this goes a little bit beyond CSR funding. CSR funding is only in the first part of it. The others are recruitment and things like that. But overall, how we try to kind of create a visual graphic around how IIT Madras is so closely intertwined with the society in general. So that was more about it. But yeah, capacity building is something another I think we all can do as organizations, right? I think that's again we have a legitimate right to claim that spot. So capacity building, spearheading some new research areas. These are all things I think we should certainly do. And as some sort of a group, we should approach the ministry in trying and see if it can be mandated in a soft way to help spend some 20-25% of the CSR funds for scientific research. and identify some of the key areas. As you can see from the budgets and other things, I'm sure that this year and all, there will be a sizable allocation on this is on, say, hot areas, right? Like healthcare or infrastructure or AI and data science. And these are obviously the most relevant and most talked about topics. So definitely, there will be a lot of funding available in these areas.
Dr. Akriti, you had a question. Please go ahead with your question. Dr. Akriti.
Yeah. Thank you, Kaviraji, for such a wonderful presentation, and Vasudha ji. So my question, actually, I have two questions. One is related to this incubation and investment you have just shown in your previous slide. Can you just let me know if what kind of funding is being given in that particular sector? I mean, do they fund the startups or development of the incubator, or maybe running some cohorts or something like that? And what exactly is the average ticket size that is being taken as CSR funding in this particular vertical?
Yeah. So there are two things to it. One, IIT Madras has its own internal startup ecosystem, and second one is IIT Madras Research Park, which is the separate technical legal entity. So many organizations ask us to kind of ask us to help them connect with this, the research park. So that is where this comes up. So wherein they take sometimes equity grants. So that is obviously not CSR funding. They spend money from their R&D and product development budget. Again, that's not coming from the CSR funding. But at IIT Madras, we would like to kind of show this as a unified face, right? So that we don't drop the ball that way, right? So whenever there is a request from our clients to say that they would like to spend their R&D budgets or product development budget on some of these things, or they would like to have a look at some of the startups incubated in the IITM Research Park, we'll be more than happy to kind of help them connect with those startups, right? And those who are willing to give their grants for nurturing internal startups, student startups, occasionally we come across such organizations also. We take that help to kind of nurture that, but then
So
that does not go with
recently,
any equity
yeah.
grant. That doesn't come with any equities in return.
Got it. So recently, did you get any such funding for the funding of the startups, or grant given to the startups? Would you remember any
Yeah,
case?
so we have an overall entity called IIT Madras Nirman, right? And which you can see on the internet, Center for Innovation. So Center for Innovation itself has raised funds from various sources. But in our case, some of those fundings also come from alumni, not necessarily from the alumni from their personal charity, and not necessarily from the CSR funding, because alumni feel for their juniors and youngsters who
Alma.
are growing up in the campus, right? So whenever the alumni visit, the startups, the startup ecosystem or the Center for Innovation, they obviously get really energized thinking about their own BTech days and things like that. So they are more than happy to loosen their purses and give some funds to the younger startups. So that kind of really helps. Any other points from you, Vasudha? Would you like to add?
Maybe just also to add that in IIT Madras's case, the incubator is the IIT Madras incubator is a separate Section 8 company. So they have also received funds in the past. What we raise funds, as Kaviraj mentioned, is for the pre-incubation stage, which is still student groups which are dabbling with entrepreneurship ideas.
Okay. And the Manoj, if you would allow, I'll just ask the second question.
Go
Uh,
ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So the next question is related to since in the last discussion just we had before your last slide regarding the protocol for getting the projects from the scientists. Actually, I wanted to identify because whether you sensitize them at first that okay, these are the things and these are the corporates are looking into and all that stuff, and then after you get the projects or you solicitedly get the projects from the scientists and the people in the labs, and then what exactly is internal
Good
protocol? You
question. Very
select
good
certain
question.
things
Very
and all.
good question, because I think it's an iterative process. It requires fair amount of encouragement from our side as well, right? So we have this interaction with the faculty members and try and they are all working on really good quality work. It's just that as I mentioned in the first part, you may need to rewrite the whole thing with and you don't want like a 100-page technical proposal to go to a CSR head of an organization, there's a high probability that it might get shot down in the beginning itself, right? So you kind of help them prepare an executive summary, which, focusing on the impact, right, what it creates and things like that, and then get that person's interest perked up, and then after that you kind of get them facilitate some calls for this, faculty involved and all of that. So that also, and as I said, like, encourages success stories encourages other people to kind of join in as well. So that's how we have a team on proposal writing, kind of working with that.
Oh, okay, okay. And how big is the size of the team? I'm sorry, I'm asking too many questions.
No worries. So it again depends. So overall, see, but I don't, while there is a CSR team, but there are many of the support functions like marketing and others are shared between CSR and alumni, right?
Okay.
Like HR, MIS, technology, all of that is like equally shared, right? So overall, put together, we may have, including support functions like, you know, donors, stewardship and things like that, we may have about 50, 55 people, but front-end team may be much, much smaller in size.
Okay. Thank you so very much. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Dr. Nadeem?
Uh, Good afternoon, Mr. Kaviraj. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I represent the CSIR Central Drug Research Institute, and my question was that
I did
somewhere you
meet a few
mentioned.
people from Central Drug Research Institute, I think, sometime back. Anyways, kindly go ahead.
Yeah. I'm happy to share that we have an MOU with IIT Madras with the
Correct,
Bosch
I meant
Center.
that. Yeah.
We have been interacting with the team there. So I was just I heard that you mentioned something about the clinical trials. So I was wondering, can you share some of your thoughts on the organizations who are actually willing to support those clinical trial? That is one part. And the second part, that you, since as a CSIR, CSR nodals in the respective labs, I was just listening that you said that you have a team on proposal writing and so on and so forth. I just wanted to understand what exactly the type of structure that the labs or the organization can have with minimum human resource available, so that we can inbuild the capacity building, and then we can look forward for the corporates for those funding.
Okay, so can you just repeat that second part of that question? The first part I caught. The second part, what was it? Like the
Second
last part?
part, see, since the CSIR has recently, I mean, I should not say recently, but few years back, this particular CSR was introduced in our system. So since you mentioned that you have a team of around 50, 55 people, and maybe around 10, 15, 20 people in the top lead roles in your department to approach the corporates for funding. So as an organization, what key activities we should take up in the institute to build up the corporate proposals, what kind of a team should be there with roles and responsibilities, so that we can reach out to industries. It would be rather how we should in-house capacity build, so that we have a better understanding, the one on the proposal writing, one team on the, I mean, just a basic structure what the institution should have internally.
Yeah. So first part, obviously, see, the one thing about this clinical trials is also that, you can look at it as a part of a larger project. That's another way. So rather than just taking that alone and then making it difficult for the other organization to fund it with, uncertain outcomes coming out of it, um, you know, you can look at it from if it's a part of a larger project there where this is also a part, then it becomes easy for them to kind of, because there's always going to be another outcome. There are organizations in the financial services sector, like in the insurance sector and all of that, who have been kind of willing to come forward because they're also used to dealing with this kind of uncertainty in their business domain also, right? So it kind of aligns with their internal philosophies also. So that is one part of it. Internally building up the capacity, yes, but yeah, I must also say that the number of organizations who have shown the progressiveness to kind of fund these kind of clinical trials is like maybe just one or two, like, right? I mean, I should qualify that. It should not look like it is everybody is doing that. Far from it. In fact, that's a conversion that we all need to do. We all need to kind of help achieve, right? So that is one part of it. Second, in terms of internal capability, I think it's very important. I think uh, certainly it is good to have those common resources which will kind of help people with proposal writing and things like that, right? And also understanding what is going on in the market intelligence, right? Like what is going on in the CSR space, like what are the companies funding, generally getting an understanding of that. Um, so if you are, it also depends honestly on which phase of the evolution curve that you are in. Right? If you're starting from the scratch, yes, you need to have internally structured data around all these things, build your own databases, proprietary systems with all these things. And uh, whereas if you are 3 or 4 years, luckily for us now, we have moved a little ahead in the curve right now because of the sheer number of years that we have been in the system. So we have systems, but I can clearly say that 5 years before how we were and right now we are, there has been a journey, right, in terms of building the systems, database, and contacts of people, building relationship with those people. All these are important. So you need to have internal resources. The answer is yes. You need to have internal resources who are working on various levers, be it getting information about the donors, the themes that they are working on, or working with the faculty internally, the researchers or the faculty internally, and getting the projects done. It's a fair amount of investment that is required, but the good thing is that it will pay off. It will pay off
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
medium to long term.
definitely. Thank
And
you.
maybe
Thank
if
you.
I can add, the question on how do you build proposals, I think in the initial days, working with the scientific community, with the faculty or researchers, and sensitizing them to the SDGs, how they can relate their project to something that the corporate can understand, give them cues that totally abstract research, people may not understand it, but if it can be aligned to an SDG and with I think that part in the initial years helped us, because if you work with them and then some of them get some CSR projects, then word spreads around and then they start aligning. As Kaviraj was saying, some success stories help the others, catch on to it. And, in fact, I sometimes joke that this whole process of what the scientific community is working on and puts proposals and what the corporates wants, it's actually like a very crude shadi.com. And finding that match is some of the challenges we play. But yeah, sensitizing our faculty is an important part that you will have to do, because corporates are not going to change as easily, but we can, what is available with us as resources, we can.
True,
See,
true.
adding on to that, in fact, talking of that, right? There are some practical now. This high level discussion is one part. There are some practical on the ground challenges in this, right? Like, say, for example, expectation management is like a big issue on both sides, on corporate side as well as. So our office really takes a lot of that buffer, because organizations sometimes want everything to be done next iteration, 10th iteration to be done by like tomorrow evening and today night and all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you
Very true.
go and actually do that. You go and knock on the door of the professor or the researcher, immediately get it done. He or she may be engaged with some other pre-scheduled activities, but then they stop all of that, do it. And so there's a little bit of convincing that needs to be done. But the moment they give the proposal, there is an expectation from their side that there will be some funding coming through their way in the next
Yeah,
one
yeah.
week, 2 week, 3 weeks. The same corporate guy who kind of insisted on getting this by 11:50 p.m. tonight, then goes completely silent, because he has to go through his committees and like his audit committee and all of that, right? And then we are kind of following up to see if there is any, and then they kind of say that we will let you know if there is any update, those kind of things. And then going back to the faculty, so frankly speaking, there are practical challenges in this whole thing, right? In managing this whole expectation cycle on both sides. And sometimes you know researchers also get a little bit demotivated when their projects don't get funded, because obviously he or she believes it's the best project and the most relevant one, but then the company may have a completely different thematic preference for that year, and then they might just choose something else for whatever reasons, right? And they are also under different kind of considerations and constraints, right? Say, as we said, oh, we want to do something around our factory, or like things like that, right? So, and then going back to the faculty and saying that, sorry, your project didn't get funded this year, but give us a project proposal again next year. And so making them write again, so they also sometimes gets demotivate, humane tendencies, right? Like so. So things like that. I think all this is a part of this whole fundraising thing. It's not really very straightforward. So managing these expectations, managing the equations with the stakeholders, all of that is very important.
Thank you, thank you. Just a little question again. That I was just wondering that when we receive the CSR funding, there is an agreement that we execute from the funding agency, whosoever is giving the funds. Just wanted to understand, what is there anything specific which should be really avoided in those agreements from the institutional perspective?
See, again, that depends on the organization. We would obviously want to avoid infringement on the one. Obviously, IP is a thing that you need to look at, but
Yeah,
IP
yeah,
for CSR project, it is out in the open, so the company cannot have proprietary IP for that. So that's very clear.
yeah, yeah.
Second, faculty would like to, or the researcher would like to maintain their independence and their freedom to work,
To
right?
operate.
So while there can be governance structures and all of that, we try and limit the infringement on their freedom to work the way they want, right? Like so, we don't want to end up in a situation where the funding organization tells them to do, okay, do this, and then they end up doing that area,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
that
yeah,
will not
yeah.
work, right? Because
Oh, yeah,
very
yeah. Very.
clearly, yeah, these are very independent people. So the researcher would like to pursue his set of, so that alignment has to be very clear. Like, no, this is his area of work. This is what he's going to do. This is what is agreed upon. Now, let's look at it on a previously agreed upon frequency. What is the outcome? Within that thing, kind of leave him or her, aside, like let them do their work. I think that is something that I think we should look at.
Thank you, Kaviraj. Thank you, Vasudha. Thank you.
Just picking from where Dr. Naseem left, I just wanted to ask you once, let's say through a CSR funded project, an IP is created, right? And let's say it cannot be in the name of the company, it has to be probably in the name of the institute. Uh, how does the process after that, after securing an IP, let's say somebody is interested in using that IP, for societal impact or societal good, or let's say for some developing that domain, how do you handle the process after getting an IP through CSR project?
No, so whatever IPs have been generated, it's like open source, right? So many people use open source code to create even proprietary software after that by adding their own. But again, look at what component of it is open, and what is a proprietary part and all of that, right? So whatever has been created with the use of CSR funds will remain open, right? That is for sure.
So if somebody is interested in using that IP through IIT Madras, how does one go about it? Because that's a challenge, in convincing our let's say scientists, that probably I do not know in whose hand it will land up. It may be somebody who is operating in that domain, or somebody is operating in that sector, and he may use that thing at no cost, and in the end
Yeah, but
consumer will not
that is
have that.
expected. Yeah, that's expected, right? It is like this, right? Like you use an MLA fund or an MP fund to create a bus stop or a bus stand or whatever it is. Like, so, everybody uses it. Similar way, like, if a database is created for common use, everybody uses that. But you cannot restrict that. No proprietary applications cannot ever be built on that based on that database. Like this part is open in the market for everybody to in the society. Now, you want to use whatever is available free of cost to create your own proprietary ecosystem separately, right? That's the way it works for everything, right? Like so. It's like this database is available to you, me, and Vasudha, and everybody on this call. Like now, how we decide to use that is like could be in our own respective ways.
Okay. So, any more questions? I don't think there are any more questions. So,
Yeah,
thank
just
you.
just a small thing, yeah, just
Yes.
related to this one. If it's a product, say for example, like we are working in agricultural research and we develop products and various precision technologies. So if it's that we are getting from a CSR funded project, we can go for IPR filing and all with this.
Yeah, so allow me to come back. So I think IPR funding, IPR is possible. I mean, you can create an IP around that. Uh, the IP created will be in the open domain, right? And there are licensing things that is possible. In some cases, licensing is allowed, right? So that this has to be addressed on a
We
case
are
by case
working on a
basis, right?
non-exclusive licensing policy in ICR. So we are giving the non-exclusive licenses to various companies and firms. So we can license later on. I mean, that's what you want to say? If that
Yeah,
allows.
so there are cases, for example, in our cases, there are domains where products have been developed and then that has been licensed to some of the other people, and whatever royalty comes, that then comes to the institute, which is again for the social good. It's either pumped back into further into the same research lab itself, right? So it is not a, so for example, the university is not a profit-making entity for sure, right? So the whatever the fund comes in, it's again pumped back into the research into that area.
True. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So any more questions? So I think Dr. Kaviraj and Vasudha ji both, thank you so
Sorry,
much
I'm
for.
not a doctor. I just need to correct that. I'm just Kaviraj. Yeah.
Sorry, my mistake. So Kaviraj ji and Vasudha ji, thank you so much for sparing your time. I know Kaviraj ji is hard pressed for time today. I think from 10:30 he had a
Convocation is
convocation
going on
session,
actually.
and
Yeah, it's
we
going
had
on
to
still. Yeah.
rearrange this. So thank you for sparing your time, and it was indeed a wonderful, perspective on what IIT Madras does so well, in mobilizing these CSR funds. As you said, it's a long journey. It's not a 1 month, 2 month, or a 3 month thing that you have evolved into. It is a long journey, and as you said, 5 years back, IIT Madras for CSR funds was something different than what they are today. And clearly, this platform is a basis, to learn from the best practices of each other's institute. And I think today that purpose has been served very effectively with your experience and whatever things that IIT Madras does. Both inputs from Vasudha ji and your good self were very, well received by the CSR nodals. And I thank you once again for sparing your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's just an absolute honor for us both, myself and Vasudha, to be part of this forum. We really enjoyed the interactions with the fellow travelers on this journey together. So look forward to collaborating and not stopping this at this, and but rather continuing our collaboration and the dialogue, and taking things forward and see how we can take some of these movements together as a group. Thank you for all your support and encouragement.
Thank you. And Vasudha ji,
Same here.
final comments from you also.
No, I think that this is a good initiative in, first of all, bringing us all together. We are creating a new segment in CSR. So I think we will need to fall upon each other, maybe collaborate, maybe make our faculty work with, across institutes. So I think that the opportunities are many, and we should continue to look at how to leverage our pooled strength better.
And Kaviraji will be more than happy if, as a group, we can, if there is some, we need to meet somebody in the ministry or something, as you suggested, even that thing can be explored, and some of us can be part of your CSR conclave, half a day CSR conclave, as you just mentioned. So, and the hub and spoke model, if you want some of the institutes, not, let's say there are institutes from the agriculture research, Indian Council of Agriculture Research. If you want to do something in that area, there are CSR noodles present in this call from those institutes. So maybe we can, leverage on each other's strengths and go ahead. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.